Growth Pod is brought to you by Genero, a leading growth agency in the Nordics. We interview marketing experts, business leaders, and entrepreneurs to uncover the stories and strategies behind profitable growth.
Today's guest is Hans Skruvfors, the CEO of foodora. Foodora is the most popular platform for restaurant, grocery, and other deliveries in the Nordics. Before joining foodora, Hans held leadership roles at companies like MEPA, Accenture, and Procter & Gamble. Welcome to the show, Hans.
Thanks, Joshua. Super excited to be here.
So I think probably everyone in our audience listening right now has seen or knows about foodora. But could you give a brief kind of overview of the story? How did you guys end up where you are today?
That's a good and maybe a complicated question as well, because foodora was actually founded in Germany in 2014 with a simple idea, basically to deliver food from restaurants to a customer's home. But back in 2014, this service was available throughout Europe, but with one key difference, that the restaurant themselves delivered the food. So the foodora idea was basically to take over that part from the restaurants, i.e., having the riders and the couriers deliver the food for the restaurants. And then foodora took off, expanded basically all over the world, Australia, Canada, Austria, and so on, but then also closed down in many of those countries, or being acquired. But then ended up being more of a Nordic company, actually. So where it all started in Sweden in 2016. So 2 years later than in Germany, with the classical founder story, maybe like the two guys in a very small office with filled with delivery bags and a dream. And now, like 7 years later, quite a big office. We're like 500 people here in the Stockholm office. We have employed more than 5,000 riders in Sweden. We have 500 pickers in our foodora markets, our grocery stores. So we're like, from 7 years on, we become one of the Sweden's biggest private employers. So it's been quite a journey.
That's pretty incredible. And didn't you say that during one of this period of like really intense growth, you hired 1,200 people in a single month?
Yeah, that's true, and I don't know actually how we made it happen, but we did, because it all sort of kicked off in a way really fast when COVID hit, which was obviously a really bad thing for the world in many aspects, but for us it really triggered two mega trends that were sort of sleeping a little bit. Obviously it was digitalization, e-commerce, that suddenly just boomed, because people didn't want to go out, and at the same time it was the home delivery part. Before, you were kind of used to, you can go to your 7 days later, you can go to the postal office at your Kesco or your ICA store or wherever, and suddenly like getting things home became super important. So we almost overnight, we basically doubled our order volume, and just kept on going. It was like a real hockey stick, but on every day. And you might think, as a digital company, that it's shouldn't be so hard. Just buy more server capacity, right? And everything will be okay. But I think everything broke down. We had no couriers to deliver the food. Customers were super happy. Unhappy. They ordered. They didn't get the food. Our customer service, got the really bad calls into them. People were super frustrated. and restaurants, before we had we had a sales team, right, going out to restaurant telling them like, oh, can you please be on our platform, here's the contract and so on. And now it was instead like thousand and thousand of restaurants coming to us like, we need to be on the platform tomorrow. And obviously we had no personnel for any of these, so we really had to ramp up staff and recruitment super fast.
What was the thing that allowed you to not just kind of break down in this period of really rapid growth, like to basically be able to keep the team motivated, to really focus on the essential things, ignoring a lot of fires, I would guess. Um, and yeah, how did you stay focused and just survive this crazy ride?
It's yeah, good question. But we survived somehow, right? But I think really early on, I had this idea in back of my mind that I continuously communicated to the management team and in the entire company that, in life, I think so many times we live as zombies. We don't really change our behavior, and especially as customers, you get used to a certain behavior. You shop at your usual store, or you buy pizza, via phone from your classical pizzeria that's next door, and so on. You don't change behaviors. And suddenly we had an amazing opportunity, once in a lifetime in a way, and this paradigm shift. To really make a big mark on the Nordic society, uh, going from someone that barely no one knew to becoming a like super successful and big company. And this was the time to grab that opportunity, something to tell our grandchildren when we sit in the retirement home. And I think that dream of like, we let's just make it happen. Let's This is our time, and to get the entire company on board that this is it. This is when we will make a big change, if we grasp this opportunity. So and I think everyone bought into it, but it was honestly, it was a lot of fires, as you say. It was a lot of hard work. I know, for example, like in the management team, we had management team meetings 2 hours a day, uh, even on weekends in the beginning. So because we wanted to make sure that everyone got, like, cannot be bottlenecks when you have to move that fast, right? And there's so many fires, so like just super quick on decision making. So it was very intense time. We were very tired, I think, or we were, but I think it was one of those, like, like Navy SEAL moments when you are very close in as a group, and you experience something that's quite tough but also very positive, and you came out of it like super strong.
And I bet it's like something that everyone who was working during that time can look back on, like you said, and remember, not just remember it fondly, but also be proud of like what you guys were able to accomplish.
Yeah, for sure. And it's quite fun still to sort of remember like where we came from, and how small our business actually were. And now I think almost everyone knows about Foodora in one way or another, and see us on the streets. And yeah, becoming like, honestly, like, a little bit of what we were talking about, becoming from that no one knew us to becoming a household name that everyone knows about us. Everyone has a maybe opinion about us, good or bad, but like we took a place in the Nordic society, and obviously there to stay.
Yeah, it's very few companies that have done that journey that quickly. And you kind of alluded to this, but obviously, lots of fires. Things happen, and customers are frustrated. How do you think about trying to maintain customer satisfaction so that you're not just experiencing all this growth, but it's actually sustainable growth because our customers are going to keep coming back. They're going to spread the word with word of mouth and so on.
Yeah, and that was, I think, a little bit that I talked about before. Like everything sort of broke down in the beginning, right, when everything doubled. What was super then important to us was that we needed to make decision and solve things super fast. And you cannot do that when you're hierarchical. You need to push the decision-making power out in the organization and enable them to take decisions as fast as possible, and create that culture that, the only failure there is not to act, um, and enable people to dare to actually do that. I think we just talked about, like, I think it's so much in the culture, and showing that, like, acting and taking fast decisions are more important than taking the right decisions. And I think by doing that and being transparent with that, everything is not always, easy and positive, but we're doing everything we can to turn this around. You also gain a lot of respect from customers as well, being that transparent. So by enabling everyone in the organization to make fast decision and being transparent, we solve sort of the CX or the experience, step by step, and it really helped to grow a very big and loyal customer base.
Yeah, I think that's something that isn't like pointed out often enough, which is if you make a mistake, but you solve it you respond to it in a really positive, friendly, helpful, transparent way, you can actually you can increase loyalty. Like you don't just bring it back to where it was. You actually increase it, which is can be pretty powerful.
Yeah, I fully agree, and I'm not saying in any ways that we're perfect on this, and we can obviously still be much better. But I really seen some examples with customers ordering via platform, but also like our restaurants partner, for example, where we screwed up. Um, but then just acknowledging, being there, taking responsibility for the mistake, being transparent, showing that we're good people, that we want the same thing, we want to do good, and a little bit like overcompensate. And I think many of the best relationships we have are coming from a sort of not a bad spot, but like, like not a spot where it's like, okay, we're more partners, but there's no relationship. But then actually the partnership breaking down a little bit, but then going the extra mile to solve it, and then suddenly you become super strong in that relationship.
That's incredible. But were you able to get that kind of positive, optimistic, solution focused culture, and how were you able to spread that throughout the entire organization and team?
Uh, it's a good question, and I think I in many ways I'm not a big believer in when you walk into a lot of different offices, you see this. We believe in cooperation or integration or whatever it might be, because it doesn't really mean anything. Like every company works with cooperation or so on. I really believe it sits in the people, and it's the leader's most important role is to create that culture, create that optimism, and it needs to start with me, and then if I'm behaving in a certain way, and I'm hiring people that behaves in that way, where you're focus on taking risk, and that's what you want to do, and have fun and be positive, see opportunities. There's like no challenges there's always opportunities. As you say, we might have a challenge with a restaurant partner, but that can actually be an opportunity to create something stronger. And so I'm a big believer in that culture comes from the top, and how you act, not what you say, and but how you act, and then yeah, and then it just goes on from there, and hire the right people, hire on attitude, not on if you have the best grades or the best knowledge experience from a certain field. Many times you will learn that, but attitudes always beats experience in my book.
Is there any specific attitude that you look for, or any questions or ways that you kind of try to find that when you're interviewing someone?
um, I, maybe it's a classical thing, but and maybe it's more common actually as well in the US, but I always ask for mistakes. Uh, so many people comes to me and like the CV is so much better than mine. It looks perfect. It's they've done it's an MBA here or top grades here or McKinsey there, or like it just looks amazing. But I believe you grow as a person, and you uh, when you overcome things. And I and there's so many times where if there's not good examples of when you overcome things or gone through hardship, it can be actually in private life, but or in work life. That's when you become a stronger individual and also dare start to learn from your mistakes, and dare to do mistakes and realize that it's not that bad. um, um, I I think so many of us are, and in interview processes are, we come from a place where we have like this mental straitjacket that we are rewarded when something that someone tells us to do. When the teachers tell us in school that we should learn about all the kings from the 17th century, the one that gets the best grade is the one that just do that. And not the one that actually questions why are we doing this, why is this important for us, how can this leverage my life, and like can we do it in another way, or should we learn actually something else. So many times when people come to me in the interview stages, I know they are perfect, they've gone through that in life, but can they actually break free of that? uh, and that's what I try to figure out in interview processes.
Okay, that's interesting. I think anyone who's trying to get a job at Foodora should pay attention to that answer. You mentioned delegation and empowering people, and that obviously requires giving them the freedom to make mistakes, like you said. But how do you actually create that kind of, shall we say, psychological safety where, a lot of companies talk about, like you said, they put the poster on the wall, but everyone knows if you make a mistake and you have to go to your boss or to management and explain it, you will be scolded, you're going to be blamed or shamed. And so people don't do it because our egos are, I mean, we're all fragile people.
Yeah.
Um, so how did you actually go about creating this and showing that this is not just talk? We're actually allowing you, encouraging you to take responsibility and make mistakes or make decisions and potentially make mistakes.
Yeah. um, I think we do that in a lot of different ways, and trust me, it gets harder and harder the bigger the company gets, because the bigger something becomes, then everyone wants more control because it feels unknown, right? So you always have to fight this all the time. Um, so we talk a lot about that you need to dare, you need to do the mistakes, you need to dare, but then you also need to be like Bamse, which is a cartoon figure here in Sweden at least. I'm not sure if did Bamse make it to Finland.
I don't think so, but just yeah, Swedish speaking Finns, yes, but I don't think
Okay,
it.
but he was this
Not yet.
super strong bear in a in a, and he always said if you're strong then you have to be nice. So it's also like, so we really like, if you gonna walk on the line and dare to do things and challenge yourself, we also need to be super nice to each other. It means celebrating when something goes really well, but it also is equally as important, or maybe even more important, to bring each other up and push each other to when things are not going the right way or you're actually doing mistakes. That's when you as a leader make a difference, to say that amazing, there is actually no mistakes in this world. That only means that you tried and now you need to try again, and you learn something from your first try. So it's um, we that is the philosophy, that we just need to be super nice to each other. Like whenever someone is down or making a mistake, um, it's actually something good, and let's do it again. And another I think we need to do this even better, to be honest, but um, really trying to celebrate in everything from all hands, lifting up good examples and so on, but into the one-to-ones as well. Not only celebrating results, but celebrating the actions. I think in so many companies you celebrate, oh, we reached this fantastic milestone of sales, or we reached this amazing KPI. Congratulations, flowers to you. But instead, yes, you can celebrate that, but also like focus on actually celebrating actions. That this team started this thing, amazing. Like, oh, and now we're on to, like, we created a completely new process. There might not even be like results yet, but like celebrate the actions, that breaking free from the habit. And I think when you lift those things up, people see that and realize, okay, I can do that as well.
I love that. Could you talk about the importance of having fun at work? And I'm talking. I saw an example of this. I think it was from your LinkedIn, where the Swedish marketing team had created this using ChatGPT to create this Swedish anthem-based or styled product description for a cucumber, which is obviously just like a quirky, funny thing to do. But does that kind of speak to a culture of where you don't really take yourself all that serious, and there's a lot of freedom to just do goofy things for the sake of having fun?
Yeah, I love that you've seen that. I think that's one of the moments where I was really, really proud, because I had nothing to do with that, that cucumber product description example. It sort of just organically happened, right? And that's when I sort of know that I at least during that day, I felt like, okay, I created something good here in terms of culture. Because I think I'm such a big believer in having fun at work. And in life. We're just here a very, very short time, and you actually tend to spend it mostly at work, more than you see your family. Um, and and then if you're going to spend most of your life at work not having fun, that's going to be a miserable life. Um, so I think that's just super important. And I also a really strong believer in, if you're doing something that you think is fun, you're gonna do it much, much better than something you do not think is fun. Um, doing when I have to iron my shirts, I hate it, and I don't actually do it very well. But when I do something else that I think is very fun, I'm good at it, right? And that's why we really talk a lot also about, like, we need to be professional, but we also need to be silly, having fun, being goofy. There are certain aspects where we just, okay, let's lock in, be laser focused, and be professional. But also, like, you cannot do that all the time. You don't have that mental strength to do that like 9 hours a day. So to be able to be professional, you also need to have a lot of fun, and be silly and goofy, as you say.
Yeah, I think it's quite common for people to feel that there's this misconception that you have to choose. Like, either you're very serious and committed to the objectives and focusing on performance, or you're this person who just kind of goofs around. I think personally also, a lot of times I've been so focused on the results that I didn't realize that having fun is actually can be a really good way of actually getting better results, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Um, so when COVID hit and you had this crazy, you were in crisis mode, essentially. I mean, you had good problems, but
Yes,
there's still
very good
problems,
problem.
very good problems. But management team meeting for 2 hours, even on weekends. You're a small company, everyone working closely together, and now it's been 3 years, over 3 years, and you've grown a lot. Household brand, as you mentioned, big team, hundreds of people at the office, thousands of couriers. Um, how have you kind of seen the culture change, and are you actively trying to maintain some of the elements of the culture and the mission and the excitement that you had during that time of crisis and kind of just working together as a small team?
I honestly think, and I tell my chairman that as well, that my even if he loves to talk on the P&L and so on, that my most important thing in this company is to keep that entrepreneurial spirit that we had in the beginning. Um, I just want to be the one that proves that you can run a big company in an entrepreneurial way with entrepreneurial spirits, where you enable everyone at the office or out there on the field to feel that they have the power to change, that they have the power to take decisions on the spot, and to have fun and to be goofy, and just innovate, just always innovating, coming up with new ideas. I think in so many, I've been working in these big companies as well, and the one that wins is the one that does what you're supposed to do within that box. And I I don't think innovation and improvement, maybe sometimes it comes from sort of top down, but I think the best ideas always comes from bottom up, where you, if you sit with something every day, uh, and you just do things, but if you and you get frustrated, but you need to, that person is the best person to fix that, to actually challenge that way of working, challenge that process, even challenging that, why do we even do this, why do I have to fill out this chart, who does even look at this chart, like, and I, it's just so important to keep that culture, and keep that culture of, there's always opportunities, and then we're going to be positive, and it's obviously tough. It's tough. It's easier when you're 20 or 30 people like we were in the beginning, and you could run around and talk to people and encourage. Like now, I don't know even. Yeah, obviously I don't even know the names of all of our employees, or so how can you keep that? But as said, we work in a lot of ways in the performance review processes, and we with the but also with leadership. Like, I if you have the right leaders, if I act in a way that I want people around me to act, that's going to spread. And So I'm doing everything, and we're doing. We have this thing that I think is a little bit controversial, but um, whenever someone comes to you as a manager with a new idea, we always say yes. Uh, and it sounds maybe a little bit crazy, uh, but I think that, like, coming back to that, everyone has that straight jacket on when you grow up, and high performers have that straight jacket on, that just do whatever that is you're told within the box. And when then someone dares to step outside of the box, dares to go to the manager and pitch a new idea, if you say no to that, even if it's the worst idea you ever heard, that person will crawl back to his or her shell and never come up with a new idea. So always say yes. Always say yes, and then it can be fixed along the way, right? But say yes. You need to encourage that drive to actually want to fix and change things. Yeah, I think that's sometimes a little bit of a shock when you come here as a new manager. It's like, okay, first rule, always say yes.
I think that's pretty incredible because it's so, like you said, it definitely sounds a bit crazy, but it's also so simple that you can scale it to every single manager and be like, this is how we do things. Um, are there any other things like that? Any other crazy rules that you've seen work really well?
Um, I don't know actually if we have more crazy rules, but I think that's the big one. And then I think what comes along with always saying yes is the philosophy of act and adapt. That's really engraved in our culture as well. That um, also maybe an effect of me coming from my background in big companies, uh, where you tend to analyze and analyze and analyze, and then finally, after months of analysis, you're ready to take a decision, and then the competitor do something else, and suddenly everything changes, and then you go back to the drawing board and you analyze more. And I really want to turn it around. let's act first. Let's jump into the water, start swimming, and then you analyze like how is this going? Oh, we're drowning. Okay, let's fix that. But let's fix that while we are swimming. So it's also like let's say yes, let's try things, and so do the acting. Then we can analyze, and then we can learn, and then we can change things, and so it becomes great. And I think it's a pleasure to work in a digital business in that sense, because we have the safety net in a sense to test this. We can test this in Turku area 17. We can try a crazy idea there. There might be some customers that are super angry at us in Turku, area 17. But hey, then we learned, and then we know what we did wrong. Then we try it again in another area, and suddenly like, oh, this is great. This is what customers love, and then we can roll it out across, a nation or a city.
So it sounds like you're trying to build this culture where you have hundreds of people who are empowered on every level to go out, make mistakes, try things, and experiment.
Yes, and
How do you
uh,
how do you is there a tension between this constant experimentation and then when you see something that works, wanting to kind of standardize it and spread it throughout the organization? This thing in Turku area 17 was, test was phenomenal. Let's roll it out all over the country. Is there a tension between the two? And if so, how do you manage it?
it's obviously there is a tension, right, on those things, and it's one thing is for me is also like trying to, when you look at the team around you, that you need to have balanced teams as well. Like if everyone around me would be exactly like me, uh, we would have a lot of fun initiatives and projects, but no one would really roll them out naturally and standardize them and make them into processes, because we need that as well as a big company. So one thing is actually surrounding myself with at least some people that can actually facilitate and help that, and not only launch new fun stuff, but to actually then say that this is good, this is how we're going to roll it out, and educate people like this is how we're going to do it, put up processes and so on. So I think that's one tension, and uh, then there's always going to be tension. Like when you try to mix a team like that, you're going to have people that maybe not enjoy risk that much, and then you have some people that enjoy risk as much. And then to keep that mentality that it's act and adapt, that say yes to everything, and then it's not the end of the world if it goes wrong. It actually taught us something. It's a constant battle, but a battle worth having.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to kind of add here, if you go to kind of your LinkedIn, you see lots of examples of all the things you've talked about. So that's actually, it really looks like at Foodora, you're kind of living this culture from the top down of trying things, things that seem kind of crazy or out there, but and just kind of constantly be doing that stuff.
Yeah, and I also think it's really good sharing. Some of like that, some of the mistakes, if there are mistakes in this world, or at least some of the tries that didn't end up so well. Um, Sometimes I talk about like I had this super idea. I felt myself that we should work with home chefs, um, because we have a sister company in Pakistan called Food Panda, and there they have home chefs, 25,000 home chefs with like that creates like an own restaurant. So you go into Food Panda or Foodora, and you would obviously see the McDonald's and KFCs of this world, but you will also see Joshua's pasta place, and that would actually be you at home in the kitchen. And I felt that as a deal was like amazing, because you can get home cooked meals ordered to you, and you're like in half an hour. And I remember we started this, and I was so excited, and I didn't see any problem with the idea. but we failed miserably. I think, I don't know. I was like, there's so much. I think the legislation nature of Sweden and Pakistan is maybe not exactly the same of food health and authorities and so much regulation that we really didn't really manage to push through. But it's also like sharing those stories, and like this was totally on me. And I know there was like in another podcast, I think from like a magazine, that just said like you're crazy and it's this will never work, and yeah, it didn't. But what okay, that failed in a way, but then we know that maybe we can actually twist something to make it work. But if you let out 100 balloons, 10 of them will fly. So
That I think that's so true, and it feels like you have a very similar approach to what Amazon was doing, certainly in the early days. And Jeff Bezos pointed out that, you know, as they grow, he hopes that the size of their mistakes grow as well, because that means they're trying things. And like you said, even if it's a failure or mistake, there's often so much you can learn from it that you would not have learned from just analyzing the numbers or theory, just looking at the theory and thinking about how it could be. You actually need to try it before you can learn from it.
yeah, and I think that's one of the big reasons why Amazon is so successful, to be honest. I really love this idea. If it's Jeff Bezos himself or someone else that tells this, I'm not sure. But like the person at least says that there are no hockey sticks in this world. Like you start in terms of growth, you start something like Amazon. E-shop or e-commerce, right? And then that will have like a huge growth, but in the end it's going to be tougher and tougher to get to that hockey stick momentum. But you actually have a hockey stick in Amazon, because after a while you add something to that first curve. You add AWS, like the cloud-based solution, right? And then suddenly that have like a huge growth, and then you add like Amazon deliveries on top of that. And suddenly, so when you look at Amazon, it looks like amazing hockey stick growth, but it comes from different business lines. And I think Jeff Bezos says that in one of the talks as well. And this is what you see, right? But you don't see the 60 things that they launched that's now in the graveyard. But okay, you then 60 ideas maybe failed in a way, but then AWS became a business that's like huge. So it's really really important to sort of shoot up these test balloons. Some of them will fly and take over the world, and some of them will slowly sink to the ground.
And it seems like you guys are certainly doing that. I guess groceries is one of the later additions. I think, if I remember correctly, merchandise volume increased 4x from 21 to 22. So pretty spectacular growth. Is that kind of how you're approaching strategy? Without divulging all the details, obviously, but is that kind of how you're approaching strategy? Is that we need to constantly find new avenues of growth, because Foodora is in the enviable position of being a household brand. Like, so many companies are just striving to get there and never do, of course. You guys are there. So what's next? Like, how are you thinking about growth in the future when you're in a position that you are?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's a key part of our strategy, and that's the reason why we went into groceries, as you say. Uh, I think there's so much growth potential still within sort of the restaurant delivery business that we're in. But we're becoming quite big there, as you say. Like, so we will not grow 400% every year there anymore. It will still grow. There's a huge potential, but we need to find those extra or that added on verticals or business lines, and groceries for sure is the second one for us, where we see immense growth and huge potential still. It's so in the Nordics, in Sweden, and so on, almost across the world. It's so underutilized. whenever I go and shop groceries in a store, I cannot imagine why people are doing this. So I think this is just, like why is I think it's 4% shopping online groceries, and it makes no sense for me why that's not 50%. And I think that's where we're going. Maybe it's going a little bit slower than I anticipated, but still, every percentage of that grocery pie is big. And then obviously there will be more sort of verticals or businesses that we can build on top, as like we have in Sweden, for example, like we have the 5,000 riders, right? They are constantly out there. So if you're next to a hamburger place and there is a flower store next to it, why not deliver flowers as well? So I think there are so much opportunities of having this big fleet to actually start delivering even more, and we are experimenting and have these partnerships now as well. It's only a little bit more difficult. I think it's not difficult in a product or tech way, but it's hard for the customers, and educating the customers to go from I'm super hungry, or hangover, I need a pizza, to okay, then this the switch to I need milk, bananas, and diapers to my child. It's it's a big leap for customers. Foodora can actually deliver that home to you in 30 minutes, but it's even longer to think about like, I have no batteries in my whatever it can be, a radio or a speaker at home. Foodora. I would go to Foodora, find a Technique magazine or a Clas Ohlson store or whatever it might be. I can actually get my batteries home in 30 minutes, and you can do that now already actually, but it's a big marketing journey uh, to become top of mind, and also batteries, so to say.
Yeah, for sure. But it sounds like you kind of have your work set out for you. There's a lot of work to be done, but the opportunity is absolutely enormous.
Yeah.
Um, you joined Fedora as CEO. It was essentially it's like the company you joined then was a completely different company than you join now, that you're running now, and so I guess your role and what your day looks like has changed a lot. What would you say? Is there anything that stands out in terms of a really important, unexpected, impactful lessons that you've learned in your years at Fedora?
um there are so many things. I think the uh, maybe a personal lesson more than anything is that in the beginning, where we were so small, I was kind of a normal person in a way to the other people, uh, or the employees. And I'm still Hans. I'm still silly. I'm not the cool guy in any way. Uh, but and I try to break down hierarchies as much as possible. But I realize that now when I come in, that I'm becoming more of a symbol in a way than maybe than I wish to be. But it also means that in every interaction I had with people, if it's a big meeting like all hands, or like just meeting someone by the coffee machine, the way I act there, the way I talk, the messages I convey, the positivity, hopefully, the energy, um, that's gonna stay with the people around me and the employees and my colleagues. So it's just I think I'm just aware that like if I uh, if I have a bad day, I need to just go into the bathroom, cry for 5 minutes, and come out and be very positive again, because it's like that's what's conveyed more than actually like any strategy or any fancy culture word that stands on the wall. So it's really to be like always on conveying what I want everyone else to convey in their daily life. And I think that's a big lesson, and or lesson, but like that's something that I come to realize over the years.
I think that's incredibly impactful that you can't, wish yourself to a culture. You actually just have to live it every single day, and it starts with you as a leader.
Yeah, for sure.
Hans, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on and to hear about you guys' story. What's the best place for people who want to follow all the, the fun and the crazy and
all the
all the stuff you're
ideas that
doing?
fails, or
Yeah,
no, but it's
LinkedIn.
I think my LinkedIn profile and Foodora's LinkedIn profile are good ways to follow. And then obviously we have career pages, and yeah, you can read about us in media and so on. We tend to be a little bit all over the place, but I think LinkedIn is the way to follow us for sure.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, like I said, thank you so much for coming on, and wish you all the best of luck. It's going to be really interesting to follow what you get up to next.
Thanks, Joshua. It's been a pleasure. Keep rocking.
Thank you for listening. You can find all episodes of The Growth Pod on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts.